Throughout the Trump administration, there was a predictable dynamic in the White House briefing room. The president maligned the media, and big-name reporters milked his hostility for maximum effect. But now that Joe Biden is president, that storyline is shifting. Adam Riley has more.
We're less than 2 full weeks into the Biden administration, but already Fox News White House correspondent Peter Doocy is playing a starring role.
Mr. President, when you talk to Biden, who about?
You. You understand his best.
That Doocy question didn't get a serious answer, but others have.
Why weren't President Biden and all members of the Biden family masked?
He was celebrating an evening of a historic day.
To be clear, the tone of the Doocy-Biden back and forth isn't tense, at least not yet. Instead, it's sassy.
He always has an edge to them, but I like him anyway, so go ahead and ask the question.
Thank you, Mr. President.
And both parties benefit. Fox can brand Doocy as a brave reporter who stands apart from the liberal media herd. Biden can say he's open to the conservative press, a dynamic Doocy is aware of.
If he wants to show that he takes the tough questions, or can take a tough question, he will look to me. It's very respectful, and I hope that there's a lot more of that to come.
So far, we haven't seen or heard much from far-right outlets like One American News, whose correspondent Chanel Rian got booted for not following COVID protocol. But Politico reports that Newsmax, Sinclair, and Breitbart will all be joining the briefing room rotation, which might have Biden turning to Fox News when he needs a relatively friendly face.
All right, so Callie, what's your take on this? I mean, he has had some fun with Peter Doocy, a little bit sassy, but some of these other guys are going to come in and really try to ruffle his feathers, maybe even ask questions that allude to some kind of conspiracy theories and that kind of thing.
Well, first of all, so has Doocy. Doocy's been on him about Hunter Biden and the computer, so let's not put him aside as if it's all been sassy. But this follows something that along the way on the trail when Peter Doocy was covering him, he asked him who was going to be the vice president, and he said you. So that's kind of, where they were in that exchange.
I see.
However, the OAN people, that's a breed, it's a whole other breed. So if you follow their own rules, the ones that Biden has said they're going to follow, which is as long as the press people in the room, they can challenge us, they can be confrontational, we're not going to respond, be mad about that, but you cannot tell mistruths. We're not going to tolerate that. Well, now you're going to have to make some decisions. I personally think they should do it on the front end and just not allow them in the rotation to begin with, because it's going to make a bigger splash when inevitably that's what's going to happen, and then they got to boot them out. And then the whole question, well, you couldn't take a tough question from from the right and the conservatives, which is not the point if they're following their own rules. So I know that it's a tad bit tricky, but hey, just go back to the, quote, normalcy that everybody is praising Jen Psaki for, and follow the rules.
Yep.
Gee, Callie, I don't know about that as far as booting them out. I think the only way you're going to deal with lies is to address them on TV. And if they're going to be the ones teeing up the lies, maybe that serves a purpose for Biden and his people. Look, Adam touched on this in his piece there. There's a mutual benefit. There's a game going on here. Let's face it, everyone. Everybody in America just about loves to hate the media. Right, left, center. We're the easiest target there is. It's people hate us in their sleep. So the notion that the Biden administration is not going to play that game, maybe not to the extent that Trump did, would be hard to match that, is sorely mistaken. Think back to the Obama years, which were, Dan Kennedy, I'm sure, can give you chapter and verse on this, considered to be very adversarial toward the White House press corps, toward the media, in terms of going after whistleblowers and reporters who broke stories they didn't like. So, the idea that it's all milk and honey now between the media and the White House, just not true, and going to become less true as time wears on.
No, that's right. And the Obama White House was actually tougher on leakers and thus on the press than Trump was, probably more a matter of competence than anything else. I think the Biden White House has a real problem here, because it's one thing to be fielding questions from Fox News about Hunter Biden that have been asked and answered 150 times. It's quite another thing to start taking questions from the real radical fringe of the press about satanic pedophile rings and the like, because this is what has infected the population as a whole, and it's also infected Congress. So I think that we're going to see that infecting the press as well. And I think that, frankly, I tend to agree with Callie. We really don't need to hear those questions. It's pure, crazy conspiracy theorizing, and it has no place in the White House briefing room.
Look, here's the thing. Just because you're in the briefing room doesn't mean that you're going to get to ask a question. I mean, you could shout it and then they could kick you out because you're raising Cain inside the room. But there is a protocol. Usually it's the first two rows that get questions, the major networks and so forth, and then they can decide, just look around the room and decide who they want to call on. So, I don't think there's going to be an issue with, every day someone raising their hand, getting called on, and then spouting some conspiracy theory. I think it's important to have them in the room. It's a way to be able to address them, even if you don't take their questions specifically. I think it's a way also to diffuse any kind of criticism that you're closing the door on the conservative voice. So I think that's important as well. On another point, though, when I saw Jen Psaki get up and give her first press briefing, I remember watching various different channels, and they were all saying, "Oh, isn't this so great? She's answering our questions." And I do agree with you, Dan, and Jon as well. This is not. You hang on here, right? Because it may look slick. It may appear as if all things are back to normal, but normal isn't what people think normal was, right? A lot of the things that played out during the Trump administration did, in fact, happen during the Obama administration, except you just didn't know about it. A lot of push and pull going on behind the scenes. And so be aware, this is a honeymoon period, but they can bite.